didn't know he was the most dangerous alpha in the city when I threw a drink in his face. I just knew he deserved it. What I didn't expect was to wake up the next morning and find out he bought the bar, and me, along with it. The glass was empty in her hand before the sound even registered. Amber liquid dripped from a sharp, stubbled jaw, soaked into the collar of a suit that probably cost more than the bar's entire liquor stock. A single, perfect ice cube slid from his dark hair, down his temple, and landed with a soft plink on the polished mahogany. The bar didn't just go quiet, it died. Every molecule of air was sucked out of the room. A cocktail shaker froze mid-shake. A dart hovered in the air. All eyes were locked on the scene at the end of the polished wood. Mila Hart set the empty tumbler down with a decisive clink. She didn't wipe her hands. She just looked the drenched stranger dead in the eye. "Next time you snap your fingers at me," she said, her voice clear and carrying in the tomb's silence. "Try it with a dog. They're into that." Two mountains in black suits materialized from the shadows behind him, their movement a silent, synchronized threat. Chairs scraped as people instinctively shrunk back, a choked whisper from the peanut gallery. "Oh my God, that's Caius Wolfe." The name hit the room like a shockwave. The Caius Wolfe, Alpha King. The rumor made flesh. The man whose name was a contract and a curse. Mila's bartender Leo was staring at her like she'd just set herself on fire. He hissed from behind the service station, "Mila, you just assaulted a billionaire." She didn't look away from the man, Caius. "He started it," she said flatly, by breathing expensively. A beat, two. Then the most terrifying thing happened. Caius Wolfe smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't an amused one. It was the slow, undeliberate curl of a predator who'd just seen something genuinely new on the horizon. He didn't yell. He didn't snarl. He reached into his breast pocket. Everyone flinched and pulled out a simple, stark, white handkerchief. He dabbed at his jaw, his eyes never leaving hers. They were a strange, storm gray, and they held hers with an intensity that felt like a physical touch. "You're new," he said. His voice was calm, a low, controlled rumble that vibrated in the hollow of her chest. "I'm the owner," she corrected, crossing her arms, "which means I decide who gets served and how." One of the bodyguards took a half-step forward, a subtle shift of a hand, permission to remove the problem. Caius didn't even glance his way. He just gave a minute, almost invisible shake of his head. The bodyguard melted back into the shadows. Then, Caius stood. He was taller up close, impossibly so. He moved around the bar end, his expensive shoes silent on the floor. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. He stopped a foot from her, close enough for her to smell the expensive, woodsy scent of him, mixed with the sharp tang of her whiskey, close enough to feel the sheer, dominating energy rolling off him. It was like standing next to a sleeping tiger. Mila didn't move an inch. She tilted her chin up, meeting that stormy gaze head on. He studied her face, the defiant set of her jaw, the fire in her eyes, the complete absence of fear. His gaze flicked to her name tag, then back to her eyes. "Mila," he said, tasting her name. It sounded like a verdict. He leaned in just a fraction. His voice dropped, for her ears only. "That was a 25-year-old McAllen." "Consider it a complimentary facial," she shot back, her pulse hammering a wild rhythm against her ribs. "Pricey skincare." Another beat. That faint, terrifying smile touched his lips again. Then, he did the impossible. He sat down on the very stool he'd been standing in front of. He placed the damp handkerchief neatly on the bar. He looked at her, utterly calm, utterly in control. "I'll have another," he said. The entire bar held its breath. Mila stared. "You're joking." "I don't joke." He rested his elbows on the wood, steepling his fingers. His gaze was a locked door. The same, neat. A silent, epic battle raged in the space between them. The air crackled. He'd won by not fighting. He'd conquered the room by sitting down, and he was forcing her, the owner, to serve him. With a glare that could peel paint, Mila snatched a fresh glass. She poured the amber liquid, the glug-glug obscenely loud in the silence, and slammed it down in front of him. A drop sloshed over the rim. He picked it up, took a slow sip, his eyes on her the entire time, as if she were the complex flavor he was trying to decipher. "Better," he said, finally. She turned on her heel, the spell broken for everyone but her. She could feel his gaze on her back like a brand for the rest of the night. He didn't speak again. He just sat, a king holding court in silence, until he finally stood, placed a single, crisp $100 bill under his glass, and left with his shadows. The bar exhaled in a collective, shaky rush. Leo collapsed against the back counter. "I think I need new pants. Mila, he could end you, and he could end this whole block." "He got his drink," Mila muttered, scrubbing the counter with unnecessary force, trying to erase the ghost of his presence. "He's fine." But the strange, charged feeling in the air didn't leave. It clung to her skin. The memory of that smile, the intensity of that look. It followed her home. It followed her to sleep. The next morning, Mila arrived at work, coffee in hand, ready to face Leo's inevitable "I told you so's." Instead, she found the front door locked. A formal legal notice was taped to the glass. Behind it, inside her bar, were 3 men in suits, pointing at the walls and speaking into headsets. Leo was on the sidewalk, phone to his ear, looking pale. He saw her, and his face crumpled. "Mila," he stammered, hanging up. "You're not going to believe this." "What?" "What's going on?" He just pointed a shaky finger at the legal notice. She stepped closer, her coffee going cold in her hand. Her eyes scanned the dense legalese until they hit the key line, and her blood turned to ice. Property assets transferred as of 12:01 a.m. New ownership, Wolfe Holdings. Leo's voice was a hollow whisper. "He didn't call the cops, Mila." She couldn't breathe. He bought the bar. For a full 10 seconds, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the slow drip, drip of whiskey from Caius's cuff onto the floor. He sat on the stool as if it were a throne, utterly unbothered by the liquid soaking into his $5,000 suit. He just looked at her, not with anger, with a deep, unnerving focus, like she was a complex equation he'd discovered scrawled on a wall. "You're still holding the glass," he observed, his voice that same low rumble. Mila looked down at her white-knuckled grip on the tumbler. She set it down with a sharp clack. "And you're still in my seat." A collective inhale from the onlookers. She kept talking. Caius's lips did that thing again. Not a smile, a flicker. "I'll have another," he repeated, calm as a lake. "You're out of your mind." The same. Neat. They were at an impasse. He'd won by not playing the game she expected. The power in the room had tilted, and it was infuriating. To break the stare would be to surrender. With a sound of pure frustration in the back of her throat, Mila spun, grabbed a fresh glass, and poured another 2 fingers of the Macallan. She shoved it across the bar toward him. Their fingers brushed. It was a millisecond of contact. His skin was warm, his fingertips slightly rough. A jolt, sharp and electric, shot up her arm. Her eyes snapped to his. His storm-gray gaze had narrowed, just a fraction. He'd felt it too. He slowly withdrew his hand, wrapping it around the glass, his eyes never leaving hers. He took a sip, savoring it. "You are either very brave, Mila Hart," he said, her name a deliberate punctuation, "or very unaware of consequences." She crossed her arms, while leaning her hip against the back counter, mirroring his casual dominance. "Little bit of both. It's part of my charm." "I am assessing the charm," he said, utterly serious. "The data is conflicting." She barked a laugh before she could stop herself. "Data?" "Behavioral patterns, risk assessment, motivational drivers." He took another slow sip. "You threw a drink at a perceived threat instead of retreating. Illogical, but stimulating." "Oh, I'm stimulating. Should I get you a notepad?" "I have one," he said, deadpan. She stared. He wasn't joking. Before she could formulate a comeback, the front door chimed. A group of 3 women walked in, all sleek dresses and sharp, assessing eyes. They zeroed in on Caius like missiles, their expressions shifting from social grace to predatory interest. The leader, a blonde with a smile like a razor, glided over. "Caius, a public house? How quaint." Her gaze sliced to Mila, dismissing her instantly. "Darling, the Alpha King doesn't drink from the well. Bring the Dalmore 62 from the top shelf. He'll settle his tab with me." Mila didn't move. She looked at Caius, one eyebrow raised. "You know her? She talks like she owns a dictionary of insults." The blonde's smile froze. Caius didn't even look at the woman. His eyes stayed on Mila. "I don't." The 2 words were a dismissal so complete, so icy, the woman actually took a step back. Her companions fluttered nervously. "Caius, you are in my light," he said, his tone flat. He finally glanced at her, and the sheer, silent authority in that look made the woman pale. "Leave." It wasn't a request. It was a decree. The 3 women retreated without another word, the door swinging shut behind them. The bar was silent again. Mila studied him. That was rude. It was efficient. She was an interruption. "To your data collection." "To my drink." He finally looked away, rotating the glass. "They are a persistent demographic. They see a title, not a person. It's tedious." There was the faintest hint of something in his voice. Not weariness. Something emptier. Mila, against her better judgment, felt a prick of curiosity. And what do they see when they look at you, besides a title and a very absorbent suit? He looked back at her, and the intensity returned. A transaction, a alliance, a stepping stone. He paused. "Not you. You saw a man snapping his fingers. It's a terrible habit. You should break it." "Noted." He fell silent again, and just watching her. It was the most unnerving thing she'd ever experienced. He wasn't leering. He was analyzing. "What?" she finally snapped. "You're not afraid," he stated. "Should I be?" "Most are. Maybe most people have boring lives." Another almost smile. He finished his drink and stood. The movement was fluid, powerful, and suddenly he was too close again, leaning over the bar just slightly. The scent of him, whiskey, cedar, and pure, unleashed power, wrapped around her. "A question," he said, his voice low. "Is it part of the data set?" "Yes." His eyes searched hers. "When you laugh, is it always real? Or is it a social defense mechanism?" The question was so unexpectedly perceptive, so utterly bizarre coming from him, that it stole her breath. She just looked at him, stunned. He took her silence as an answer, gave a single slow nod as if filing the information away. Then he did something stranger. He reached into his inside pocket. She tensed, but he pulled out not a weapon, but a simple, sleek, black card. He placed it on the bar between them. No name, just a phone number embossed in silver. "For the dry cleaning," he said. She scoffed. "I'm not paying for your suit." I know. He held her gaze. It's in case you decide the bravery outweighs the consequences. He turned and walked toward the door, his bodyguards falling into step behind him. The entire bar watched him leave, the pressure lifting with his exit. Leo appeared at her shoulder, staring at the card like it was a live snake. What was that? Mila picked up the card. It was warm from his pocket. I have no idea. But as she closed up an hour later, the strange encounter wouldn't leave her. The feel of his hand, the cold dismissal of the socialite, the odd probing question about her laugh. At home, in the silence of her apartment, her phone buzzed with an alert from her security app linked to the bar's backdoor camera. The timestamp was 3:17 a.m. The footage showed a dark car idling across the street, not doing anything, just there, a shadow in the night. As she watched, the back window rolled down, just halfway. Caius Wolfe looked directly into the camera lens, his face illuminated by the dashboard glow. His expression was unreadable. Then the window rolled up, and the car drove away. Her phone dinged with a new text from an unknown number. Unknown. The car was mine. You were safe. Unknown. Sleep. Mila Hart. A second later, a follow-up text. Unknown. The data is no longer conflicting. Security didn't stop her. They just nodded and ushered her into a private elevator that shot up 60 floors without her pressing a button. The doors opened directly into an office made of glass, steel, and silent, terrifying power. Caius Wolfe stood at the wall of windows, his back to her, a silhouette against the morning sky. He was on the phone, his voice a low, unemotional rumble. No, the quarterly report is insufficient. I require predictive behavioral modeling on the emerging market. Yes, the wolf packs in the southeast. He paused, listening. Their alpha is sentimental. Leverage that. He hung up and turned. He was in another suit, this one charcoal gray. He looked completely unsurprised to see her. You're 7 minutes earlier than I projected, he said, walking to a massive desk. On it sat 2 cups of coffee. He slid one toward the empty chair facing him. Black, 1 sugar, a dash of cinnamon you scrape from the jar because you don't trust the pre-mixed stuff. Mila stopped dead. The wind left her sails. She stared at the coffee, then at him. How do you know that? Observation. He sat, gesturing for her to do the same. You made 14 drinks for customers last night. You prepared your personal coffee 3 times. The pattern was clear. That's not observation. That's stalking. It's due diligence. He took a sip of his own coffee. Black, no sugar. Sit. The chair is not a threat. Everything about you is a threat. You bought my bar. I purchased the asset, he corrected calmly. Your employment is unchanged. Your wages have been increased by 30%. Your health plan now includes dental. She didn't sit. She planted her hands on his desk, leaning into his space. I don't want your dental plan. I want my bar back. Why? He looked genuinely curious. The profit margins were unsustainable. The roof leaks. The refrigeration system is 1 power surge from failure. I've corrected the deficiencies. It was mine. And now it's mine, he said, that calm finality in his voice. And you are still there. It is streamlined. You can't just streamline people's lives. I dislike unpredictability, he said, his stormy eyes holding hers. Now I know where to find you. It's efficient. For what? She exploded. So you can drop by for another dose of stimulation? Get a Netflix subscription like a normal psycho. A flicker in his eyes. Almost humor. Television is passive. You are interactive. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a simple legal-sized folder. He placed it on the desk between them. aligning it perfectly with the edge. "What's that? An eviction notice?" "A contract," she laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "I'm not signing anything you give me." "Read it." Against every screaming instinct, she flipped it open. Her eyes scanned the bold heading, "Contract for Services, Platonic Public Engagement." Her brain short-circuited. "What?" "30 days, he said, his voice all business. "You will act as my fiancée in public settings, pack gatherings, charity events, necessary social functions. In return, all debts associated with your previous establishment are voided. You retain your bar, with the improvements, free and clear. And you will also receive a substantial completion bonus." Mila's mouth was dry. "Fiancé," the word tasted absurd. "You need a fake fiancé?" "Yes. Why?" "It is strategically necessary." "For what? To make your ex jealous? To scare off those women from last night? Pick one." He hesitated, a nearly imperceptible crack in his control. "The specifics are confidential. The terms are not. 30 days. No romantic contact required. A business arrangement." "A business arrangement where I have to wear your ring and lie to everyone?" "The ring is a Tiffany setting. You may keep it afterward. The lying is only to the public. Between us, the contract is the truth." He leaned forward slightly. "You challenged me in a room full of people who would rather cut out their own tongues than speak out of turn. That is a rare quality. One that makes you uniquely suited for this role. Because I don't like you. Because you are not impressed by me," he corrected. "It reads as authenticity." She stared at the paper, her mind racing. It was insane. It was humiliating. It was also a lifeline. The debt, the leaking roof, the failing fridge, all of it gone. "What's the catch?" she whispered. "The catch is my world," he said, his voice dropping. "It is not safe. It is full of people like the woman last night, but with sharper teeth. You will be a target. My protection will be part of the contract." "Your protection," she scoffed, finally sinking into the chair. "Great. So I go from being a bartender to what? A human shield in heels?" "You will be my fiancé," he said, as if that clarified everything. "It is the safest position in my territory, and second only to my own." The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, so certain, sent a shiver down her spine. This wasn't a game to him. This was a tactical maneuver. He reached into the drawer again. This time he pulled out a small black velvet box. He opened it. A solitaire diamond, massive and brilliant, winked under the office lights. He didn't get down on one knee. He didn't smile. He simply placed the box next to the contract. "The symbol is necessary for credibility," he explained. "Do you accept the terms?" Her eyes darted from the cold, beautiful rock to his impassive face. "What happens if I say no?" "You walk out. The bar reverts to its previous state, with its previous debts. You never see me again." He said it without a hint of emotion, a simple statement of fact, but his hand, resting on the desk, had curled into a subtle, intense fist. She saw it, the only sign that this calm, controlled takeover meant something to him. "Why me, Caius?" she asked, her voice softer now. "Really, you could buy 1,000 actresses who'd be better at this." He was silent for a long moment. He looked out the window, at the city he seemingly owned. "Actresses perform," he said finally, his voice quieter. "They show you what you want to see." He looked back at her, and his gaze was unnervingly direct. "You react. You are the only variable in my life that doesn't compute." He pushed the contract and the ring box closer to her. "The contract is for 30 days, he said, "but the protection I offer—" He met her eyes, and for the first time she saw something raw and uncompromising in the storm-gray depths. "It does not expire. Sign or don't, You will be safe either way. But only one choice lets me guarantee it. He wasn't just offering a deal. He was asking for permission. Mila's laugh was brittle. Safe? You just said your world is full of people with sharp teeth. That doesn't sound safe. It's the safest you can be within it, he clarified, as if that made perfect sense. My protection is absolute, but it requires proximity. The contract provides a socially acceptable reason for that proximity. And erasing my bar's debt is just, what, a signing bonus? It is a removal of a destabilizing variable. Your financial stress was a distraction. She shook her head, her mind a whirlwind. Then, a colder, darker thought surfaced. My dad, she said slowly, watching his face. He came to the bar a few months ago. He was scared. He asked for a loan. I said no. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Did he come to you? Caius didn't flinch. He went to less disciplined lenders, and Wolfpack aligned. Their terms are unforgiving. Ice flooded her veins. How much? The amount is irrelevant. It is no longer owed. How much, Caius? He met her glare. 200,000, plus vigorish that doubled it weekly. The room tilted. She gripped the edge of the desk. Her father, that gentle, foolish man, in debt to shifter loan sharks. Where is he? On a plane to a very secure, very distant wellness retreat. My treat. He believes he won a sweepstakes. Caius's tone was utterly flat. He is safe. The debt is gone. That is not a bargaining chip. It is a fact. Tears of fury and helplessness pricked her eyes. He dismantled her entire life in 48 hours. Her bar, her father's disaster, all of it, and presented it as a neatly solved equation. Why? She breathed. Why do all this? His jaw tightened, on the first sign of true tension she'd seen. I told you, you are a variable. I prefer to control the environment around significant variables. It was the least romantic thing anyone had ever said, and it was the only hint of truth she believed. She looked at the contract, at the ludicrous diamond, at the man who bought buildings when irritated. Fine, she spat. 30 days. But my rules. One eyebrow lifted a millimeter. Your rules. 1. You don't get to control my life outside this performance. I keep my bar, my friends, my hours. Noted. 2. No weird alpha dominance crap around me. No growling, no scent marking, whatever that is. I'm a human, not a territory. A faint, almost imperceptible twitch at the corner of his mouth. I will attempt to limit my crap. 3, she said, pointing a finger at him. You never, ever refer to me as mine. Out loud. Got it? He went very still. The air in the room thickened. For a second, his storm-gray eyes flashed with something molten, primal. It was gone in an instant. Agreed, he said, his voice slightly rough. She snatched the pen from his desk and signed the contract with a furious scrawl. She slammed the pen down. Done. He picked up the ring box. The symbol. I know. For credibility. She held out her hand, expecting him to place the box in it. He didn't. He opened it, removed the ring, and took her left hand in his. His touch was electric, his grip firm but not painful. He slid the cold, heavy circle onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it fits, she muttered. I measured your finger from 3 separate security camera angles, and the average was precise. She stared at him, aghast. He said it like he'd quoted the weather. Later that evening, he brought her to his penthouse. Familiarity breeds credible affection, he'd stated, and left her in a living room the size of her entire block while he took a business call. Bored, she snooped, not for secrets, for sanity. In a drawer of a sleek, minimalist desk, she found it. a leather-bound notebook, the label on the front, in precise, sharp handwriting. Human courtship, strategy and execution. She snorted, flipping it open. Her laughter died in her throat, replaced by wheezing, tear-inducing disbelief. She read aloud to the empty, opulent room. Phase 1. De-escalation of hostile first impression. Subpoint. Do not mention the cost of the ruined suit. Oh, it reads as materialistic. Oh my God. She turned the page. Demonstrate protective capability without overt threat display. See, removal of rival females, 9:47 p.m. He took notes on that? Another page. Humor. Research indicates it increases human mating success by 37%. Attempt self-deprecation. Risk may undermine authority. She was clutching her stomach, tears streaming down her face. Gift-giving. Carbohydrates are a culturally significant offering. Do not purchase the entire bakery. Single pastry, premium quality. Caius walked back in, phone in hand. He stopped, observing her hysterical state against the desk. You are distressed? Distressed? She gasped, holding up the notebook. What is this? He didn't look embarrassed. He looked analytical. My research. The subject is unfamiliar. I prefer to be prepared. Do not threaten her co-workers, she read, her voice shaking with laughter. Even if they are inefficient. Caius. It is a valid note, he said, frowning slightly. The bartender Leo is inefficient. His pour cost is 2% above industry standard. I have not threatened him. She laughed so hard she couldn't breathe. She slid to the floor, the notebook clutched to her chest. He walked over, looking down at her with that same bewildering focus. My data suggested laughter was a positive sign. This seems extreme. Is the research flawed? That sent her into another spiral. No, she finally managed, wiping her eyes. No, the research it's perfect. You're following it like an instruction manual for a spaceship. It is a complex system, he agreed, sitting on the floor beside her. A billionaire alpha in a $10,000 suit on the carpet because she was there. I am optimizing my approach. Her laughter faded into hiccups. She looked at him, the fierce intelligence, the terrifying power, all focused on the absurd problem of how to be around her. He was trying, really, genuinely trying, and it was somehow the most disarming, the most strangely hot thing she'd ever seen. You don't need a manual, Caius, she said softly. I do, he insisted, his gaze serious. I have never wanted to be good at something I am this fundamentally untrained for. He looked at the notebook in her hands, a flicker of something like frustration in his eyes. I acquire companies. I broker peace between packs. This is different. The variables are emotional. They are irrational. He reached out, not for the notebook, but to gently pull it from her loosened grip. His fingers brushed hers. He didn't let go. He turned her hand over, his thumb tracing the line where the massive diamond sat on her finger. His touch was shockingly gentle. This symbol, he said, his voice a low vibration in the quiet room. The research says it signifies commitment, possession. Caius, Rule 3. I am not calling you mine, he interrupted, his eyes lifting to hers. They were dark, intense, utterly sincere. I am stating a fact. The world will see this ring and believe you are mine to protect. His thumb stroked her skin once, a forbidden, possessive caress. For 30 days, let them believe it. It makes the strategy simpler. He released her hand, stood, and walked away, leaving her on the floor with the ghost of his touch and a heart pounding for a reason that had nothing to do with laughter. The ballroom was a symphony of whispered threats and glittering cruelty. Mila felt the diamond on her finger like a target. Caius stood beside her, a silent pillar of lethal calm, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, a claiming touch for the strategy. "Remember," he'd said in the car, reviewing notes in his mind, "appearances require proximity. My touch is a signal, not an advance." Could the signal be, "I need personal space," she'd muttered. No, that signal reads as marital discord. It would invite challengers. Now, surrounded by predators in Silk and Savile Row, she understood. Every gaze was an assessment, every smile a calculation. A woman with ice-blonde hair and eyes like a hawk detached from a group and glided over. Serena. Mila recognized her from the bar. "Caius, darling," Serena purred, and ignoring Mila completely. "You've brought ambiance. How rustic." Her gaze finally flicked to Mila's simple black dress. "I heard the catering was upgraded. I didn't realize it extended to the entertainment." Mila felt Caius's hand press slightly firmer against her back. A silent command. "Wait." "Serena," Caius said, his tone polite, empty. "Your father's shipping contracts with my northern territories. They expire next month." Serena's smile tightened. "A formality, I'm sure. We've been partners for years." "Indeed." Caius took a slow sip of champagne. The final shipment was 3% underweight. The wood was substandard. It warped in transit. A flicker of panic in Serena's eyes. "A minor oversight. We'll make it right." "You won't." Caius set his glass on a passing tray. "I've already diverted the contract to the Volkov pack, effective immediately. Your family is removed from my trade network." The words were spoken so softly, so conversationally, that for a second they didn't register. Then Serena's face went bone white. $1 billion gone in a sentence. "You can't, because of a joke?" she hissed, her eyes darting to Mila. "It wasn't a joke," Caius said, his storm-gray eyes finally focusing on her with the weight of an avalanche. "It was an error in judgment. You humiliated what stands beside me. In my world, that is a critical failure." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The circle around them had gone utterly silent. Serena stumbled back, her friends catching her, their faces masks of terror. Caius turned, his hand sliding from Mila's back to gently cup her elbow. "The air is stale here," he said, "only for her. Come." He led her onto a secluded terrace overlooking the city. The cold night air hit her heated skin. She pulled her arm away. "What was that?" she demanded. "A correction." "You destroyed her family's business." "I reallocated resources from an unreliable partner. The Volkov pack produces superior lumber. It's a more efficient alliance." She made a snide comment. I was going to pour a drink on her head myself. "That," he said, turning to face her, "would have been seen as you defending your position, a sign of weakness. They would have sworn you. This way, they see me defending what is mine." He caught himself. "What is under my protection? They will not make the same mistake." So that was just more strategy? Her heart was pounding strangely. Yes. "Liar." He went still. "Explain." "You didn't even let her finish her sentence. You were waiting for her. You had the Volkov pack on standby, didn't you?" A slow blink. "Preparedness is not emotion." "Your jaw was clenched. Right before you spoke. I saw it." He looked away, over the city lights. A long silence stretched between them. "Perhaps," he finally conceded, the word seeming to cost him. "The sound of her voice toward you was disagreeable. It created an irrational variable." "Irrational," she echoed, stepping closer. The scent of him, cold air and dark spice, wrapped around her. "Yes, Logically, a verbal insult from a non-threat requires only a verbal counter, or ignoring. He looked back at her, his gaze tracing her face. My response was disproportionate, a strategic overreach. Why? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. The hum of the distant city filled the space. "The notebook," he said, his voice low. "Chapter on territorial displays. It said they are primitive, inefficient, to be avoided." He took a half-step closer, eliminating the space between them. She had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze. "My wolf does not read the notebook, Mila." Her breath caught. The raw confession, wrapped in a metaphor, was more intimate than any touch. "It just reacts," she whispered. He gave a single sharp nod. His hand came up, not to touch her, but to hover near her cheek, as if feeling the heat of her skin. "To you. It reacts to you. It is a significant problem for the strategy." She could feel the warmth of his palm. She should step back. She didn't. "Maybe your strategy is wrong," she breathed. Before he could answer, before his hand could make contact, the terrace door burst open. Leo, her bartender, stood there looking wildly out of place in his street clothes, his face pale. "Mila, thank God. Your dad. He called me. He didn't win a sweepstakes. He's hiding in a motel. He said men are looking for him. He said to tell you the debt wasn't erased. It was just transferred." Caius's hand dropped. Every trace of vulnerability vanished, replaced by a stillness more terrifying than any rage. His eyes, when they met Mila's, were pure, frozen fury. "Transferred," he repeated, the word a death sentence. "Explain." Leo swallowed. "He said the original lenders. They work for you, Caius. The debt is now owed to your pack." For 3 heartbeats, Caius was a statue carved from winter. Then he moved. Not toward Mila, not toward Leo. He simply pulled out his phone and typed a single line of text. The reply was instantaneous. He read it, his expression unchanging. "Your father is misinformed," Caius said, his voice like polished steel. "The debt was purchased, not transferred. There is a difference. The original lenders no longer have a claim. My pack now holds the paper. The terms are void. He owes nothing." Mila's mind raced. "Purchased? So you own my father's debt?" "I own the obligation, and I have forgiven it. The paperwork is already filed. He is safe." He looked at Leo. "The men looking for him are the original lenders, attempting to collect what is no longer theirs. A problem I will now correct." He typed another message. "They will be dissuaded." "You're just going to dissuade them?" Mila snapped, the fear twisting into anger. "Like you dissuaded Serena's family?" "More permanently." He finally looked at her, and the raw, unleashed power in his gaze stole her breath. "They threatened what is under my protection. That is a line you do not cross and live." He paused, the intensity dialing back a fraction. "This is not a debt to me, Mila. It is a solved equation. Do not confuse the two." He turned and walked back into the ballroom, leaving Mila and Leo on the terrace. "Well," Leo squeaked, "that was the most terrifying 'it's handled' I've ever heard." Caius didn't speak on the drive back to her apartment. The rain started, a soft patter against the bulletproof glass of the Rolls-Royce. The silence was thick, charged with the unspoken. He'd been different since the terrace, not colder, more focused, as if containing a storm. Mila stared out at the wet streets. "You didn't tell me," she said quietly. "It was irrelevant," he replied, eyes on the road. "A resolved variable." "It wasn't irrelevant to me. You let me think you were just helping, but you bought a violent debt. That makes you no better than they are." The car slowed. He pulled over on the empty, rain-slicked street, putting the car in park. The interior light was off, leaving them in shadows. "Is that what you think?" he asked, his voice dangerously soft. "What am I supposed to think? You collect debts, Caius. You collect businesses. You collect people who are stimulating. What's the difference?" He turned in his seat. In the dim glow from the dashboard, his face was all sharp angles and shadow. "The difference is intention. They wanted to break him, to use his fear. I wanted to erase the threat to you. There is no universe where those are the same." "And what's your intention with me?" The question hung in the humid air between them. He didn't answer. He just looked at her, his gaze a physical weight. The seatbelt felt tight. She fumbled for the release. At the same moment, he leaned over, his hand reaching for it. "Allow me." His fingers brushed hers, then covered them completely, warm and strong. He didn't press the button. He just held her hand trapped against the hard plastic. They froze. She could feel his breath against her cheek, the scent of him. Rain, cedar, and something wild filled the car. The only sound was the rhythmic swish-swish of the wipers. His thumb moved, a slow, deliberate stroke across her knuckles. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "You smell like citrus," he murmured, his voice a low, rough vibration she felt in her bones. "And rain, and defiance." "Stop noticing things," she whispered, her own voice barely audible. "I can't." He was closer now, his nose almost brushing her temple. "You are all I notice. It's a critical system failure." His free hand came up, hovering near her jaw. She could feel the heat of it. She didn't pull away. "The contract," she breathed, a last feeble protest, "is for a fake engagement," he finished, his lips now a breath from her skin. "This is not fake." He was going to kiss her. The certainty of it, the sheer rightness of it, short-circuited every logical thought. Her eyes started to close. Honk! A blaring horn shattered the moment. A delivery truck roared past, spraying a curtain of water against the window. They jerked apart. Caius straightened in his seat, his hands returning to the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Mila sucked in a ragged breath, staring straight ahead, her entire body humming. He put the car back in drive and pulled onto the road. The silence returned, but now it was a living thing, pulsing with what had almost happened. He stopped in front of her apartment building. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. "The threat to your father will be neutralized by morning," he said, his voice back to its controlled, businesslike tone. Almost. There was an undertone of gravel. "You will be safe, right? Safe." She couldn't look at him. Her fingers found the door handle. "Mila," she paused. He didn't turn. He stared through the windshield. The notebook. Chapter 7, and it's titled Physical Affection and Its Strategic Risks. A long pause. "I'm considering deleting the chapter." Before she could process that, he reached into the back seat. He pulled out a small, elegant white box and placed it in her lap. A gift. To ease tension, per the guidelines. She opened it. Inside, on a bed of velvet, was a single, perfect, artisanal croissant. She looked from the pastry to his deadly, serious profile, and a hysterical giggle bubbled in her throat. He'd bought the carbohydrates, but nestled beside the croissant was a second, smaller box. She opened it. Inside was a key card and a note in his precise handwriting. Penthouse, top floor, for when the pretending becomes illogical. He finally met her eyes, his own a storm of unresolved want. "The choice," he said quietly, "is always yours." Mila didn't use the key card. She spent 3 days avoiding the velvet box on her kitchen counter, and Caius, with a frustrating, strategic patience, didn't mention it. He did, however, text her a photo of her father safely on a beach, holding a suspiciously large drink with an umbrella. The caption, "Variable secured. Smile is genuine. Sunburn risk, 40%. She'd almost smiled back. Today, he'd insisted she attend a low-stakes investment mixer at a rooftop garden. Public visibility reinforces the narrative, he'd said. Your presence is required for 47 minutes for optimal effect. Now he was holding court across the terrace, a glass of water in hand, surrounded by men hanging on his every low word. Mila was circulating, as instructed, which mostly meant debating whether the tiny goat cheese tarts were worth the risk of spillage. "They're better with the honey drizzle," a warm, amused voice said beside her. She turned. The man was handsome in a clean, approachable way, sharp blue eyes, an easy smile, human. He held out 2 tarts, one drizzled in honey. "Tristan Lowe, I'm in green tech, and I've been trying to work up the nerve to tell you that you have the most authentically unimpressed expression I've ever seen at one of these things. It's refreshing." Against her better judgment, Mila took the honey-drizzled tart. Mila Hart. And it's not unimpressed. It's a cost-benefit analysis. This dress is dry clean only. Tristan laughed. A real easy sound. They fell into conversation. He was funny. He asked about her, not her fiancé. He didn't look at her like an asset or a variable. For 10 minutes, she forgot about pack politics and strategic proximity. She didn't see Caius go still. She didn't see the circle around him instinctively take a step back as the air grew dense and cold. She didn't see his storm-gray eyes fix on Tristan's hand as it lightly brushed her arm during a joke. But she felt it. A pressure, a silent predatory focus that slithered across the terrace and wrapped around her throat. The hair on her arm stood up. Tristan's smile faltered. "Is it getting colder?" Caius was moving, not with haste but with a lethal, deliberate grace that parted the crowd. He didn't look at Tristan. He came to stand beside Mila, his presence a wall of solid, possessive heat. "Mila," he said, his voice perfectly calm. "Your 47 minutes are complete. We can leave." Tristan, brave or foolish, extended a hand. "Tristan Lowe, sir. A pleasure." "Your fiancé is delightful." Caius looked at the offered hand. He didn't take it. He just let his gaze travel from Tristan's hand to his face. "The pleasure," he said, the words dropping like ice chips, "is unilateral. Remove your hand." Tristan's hand fell. He paled. "Caius," Mila hissed, embarrassed and furious. "What is wrong with you?" "A scheduling conflict," he said, his eyes still locked on the now frozen investor. "Mr. Lowe's company was seeking venture capital from my subsidiary. The pitch has just been moved to indefinitely declined. Good evening." He took Mila's elbow, his grip firm, and guided her toward the exit. She shook him off in the private elevator. "You don't own me," she exploded the second the doors closed. "You can't just ruin some nice guy's funding because he made me laugh. He was flirting with you." Caius stood rigid, facing the doors. "So what? It's fake, remember? Or are you worried your asset gets dinged if someone else looks at it?" That made him turn. His composure was a thin, cracking veneer. A muscle ticked in his jaw. "It is not about the asset." "Then what? Explain it to me, Mr. Strategy. What was the tactical objective there? Humiliate a human to show dominance? Check that off your Wolfe to-do list? The objective," he bit out, each word strained, "was to remove a stimulus I found intolerable." Oh, intolerable? Was his tie intolerable? His small talk? His touch? Caius's voice dropped to a guttural register that vibrated in the small space. His eyes flashed. A literal brief flash of amber. "The way he looked at you, the sound of your laughter for him, it was incorrect. The elevator dinged, opening to the underground garage. He strode out, not checking if she followed. She chased him to the car. Incorrect? He was nice, something you wouldn't understand. He whirled, crowding her against the sleek black car. He didn't touch her, but he caged her in, his arms braced on the roof on either side of her head. His scent, usually so controlled, was wild with spice and aggression. "I am aware," he growled, his breath hot against her face, "that I do not own you." The words seemed ripped from him. "I am aware this is a contract. I am aware my methods are flawed." He was breathing hard, his chest nearly brushing hers. The amber was back in his eyes, swirling in the gray. "Then why?" she whispered, trapped not by his arms but by the raw emotion shattering his icy control. A long, tortured pause. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes, haunted. "Because," he said, the anger draining, leaving only a stark, vulnerable truth. "I simply dislike imagining you with someone who is not me. It is an inefficient use of my mental processing power. It causes system errors." It was the least romantic, most brutally honest confession she'd ever heard. He wasn't saying he loved her. He was saying her with someone else broke his logic. For a man who lived by it, it was the same thing. The fight left her in a rush. "Caius." He closed his eyes, as if pained. When he opened them, the wolf had receded, leaving only a weary, frustrated man. "I have read the chapter on jealousy. It is listed as a destructive emotion, a weakness, a bitter, almost smile. My wolf did not read that chapter either." He pushed off the car, opening her door for her. The gentlemanly gesture was at odds with the animal that had just been at the surface. The drive was silent. He walked her to her apartment door. "I will not interfere with your social interactions again," he said formally, not meeting her eyes. "It was a breach of our agreement. My apologies." He turned to leave. Mila caught his wrist. His skin was fever hot. He froze. She didn't know what she was doing. She just knew she couldn't let him walk away looking like that, like he'd failed a test he never wanted to take. "Your system errors," she said softly, her thumb over his racing pulse. "What does the manual say to do about those?" He looked down at her hand on him, then slowly turned his wrist to clasp her hand. His touch was careful, as if she might break. "The manual," he said, his voice thick, is blank. He brought her captured hand to his chest, holding it flat over his heart. The beat was a frantic, powerful drum against her palm. "This page is unwritten." The moment stretched, fragile and electric. Caius's eyes were dark pools, the storm in them perfectly still. He was waiting for her to write something on that blank page. A car alarm blared on the street below, shattering the spell. He released her hand, the mask of control sliding back into place, though his breathing was still uneven. "You should go inside," he said, his voice rough. She did, closing the door on the sight of him standing alone in the hallway, a king looking lost in his own kingdom. For 2 days he was different. Texts came, but they were logistical. "Security detail will be visible today, for protocol," or "the bar's new refrigeration system installs at 8 a.m. Do not interfere with technicians." No notebooks, no pastries, no almost confessions. It was maddening. On the 3rd evening, closing up the bar alone, Leo was sick, but his text read, "Caius said, I look tired, paid me for a week off. I'm not arguing." She felt the first prickle of wrongness. The street outside was too quiet. The usual hum of the city felt muted. She was wiping down the last table when the front door opened, not with a chime, but with a slow, deliberate creak. 3 men walked in. They didn't have the sleek, silent danger of Caius's guards. This was a rougher, hungrier kind of threat. The lead man had a scar through his lip and eyes that held no humor. "Mila Hart," he said, "we have an invitation for you, from the gentleman you left, unpaid." "The debt was cleared," she said, gripping the rag, her heart a trapped bird in her throat. "See, that's the thing about wolves," Scarlip smiled. "We don't like when someone else eats from our bowl, and Caius Wolfe took our meal, so we take something of his. That's you, sweetheart. You're the leverage." The other 2 fanned out, blocking the exits. Mila's mind raced. The panic button was under the bar, miles away. "He doesn't care about me like that," she lied, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'm a business arrangement." "Then this'll be a short trip," the man said, stepping closer. As he reached for her, the front window exploded, not with a crash, but with a percussive whomp of shattering glass. A shape moved through the curtain of fragments, too fast to be human. Caius. He didn't roar. He didn't snarl. He was a study in silent surgical violence. He moved through the first thug, a blur of motion that ended with the man crumpling against the wall with a sickening thud, unconscious before he slid down. The second lunged. Then Caius caught his fist, twisted, and there was a crisp snap. The man screamed. A sharp chop to the neck silenced him. Scarlip pulled a blade. "Alpha King," he spat. "She's not even your kind. She's a weakness." Caius finally spoke. "You are correct." His voice was the calm at the eye of a hurricane. "She is not my kind." Took a step forward. "She is my mate, and you touched what is mine." The word hung in the air, absolute and terrifying. He didn't give the man time to process it. The disarming was too fast to follow. The knife clattered to the floor. Caius's hand was around the man's throat, lifting him off the ground. "Tell your pack," Caius said, his tone almost conversational, "that their territory is forfeit. Their assets are mine. Their lives are by my sufferance. And if one of you looks in her direction again, and I will not be calm, I will be creative." He dropped the man, who gasped, clawing at his throat. "Now," Caius said, brushing invisible dust from his sleeve. "Leave. Before I remember, I promised her I wouldn't kill anyone in her place of business." They fled, dragging their unconscious friend. Suddenly, it was just the 2 of them, standing in the wreckage of her bar, the cold night air pouring through the broken window. Caius turned to her. The predator was gone. His face was pale, his expression stark. In 3 strides he was before her, his hands coming up to cradle her face, his thumbs sweeping over her cheeks, her temples, checking. "Are you hurt?" The words were urgent. "Did they touch you?" No, I'm fine." His hands slid down to her shoulders, her arms, a swift, clinical inventory. That's when she saw it. His hands were trembling. Not much, a fine, almost imperceptible vibration. But this man, who had just dismantled 3 armed shifters without breaking a sweat, was shaking. He saw her notice and curled his fingers into fists, hiding them. He closed his eyes, a shudder running through him. "Caius?" "I felt it," he whispered, eyes still shut. "Your fear, like a spike through my spine, across the city. I was in a meeting. I left." He opened his eyes, and the raw, unguarded terror in them stole her breath. "I have faced down rival alphas. I have won wars. I have never been afraid." He reached for her again, this time his trembling hand coming to rest, gently, over her heart, mirroring her position from days before, until I felt your heartbeat skip in terror from 5 miles away. "It is," an unacceptable vulnerability. She covered his hand with hers. I'm okay, because of you. That is not the point. The words burst from him, sharp with frustration. The point is that I should not be able to feel it. The point is that for 2 minutes and 17 seconds I thought I might be too late. My wolf, it nearly tore its way out in the middle of a boardroom. For a human, the strategy is in ruins. The data is corrupted. He wasn't angry at her. He was angry at himself, for feeling, for caring. Maybe, she said softly, stepping closer into his space. The data was wrong from the start. He looked down at her, his stormy eyes searching hers. The trembling in his hands had slowed, but it was still there, a testament to a control that was irrevocably broken. The contract, he said, his voice ragged. Forget it. One, it's void. Her heart plummeted. What? I cannot. I will not have you as a target because of a piece of paper I wrote. He looked away, jaw clenched. You are free. The bar is yours. The debt is gone. You owe me nothing. The arrangement, it's over. He started to pull away, to turn and walk out of the wreckage, out of her life. And Mila realized with crystalline clarity that she couldn't let him. Stop. The word cracked out of her, sharper than breaking glass. Caius froze, his back to her, a wall of tension in the ruined bar. Mila circled to face him. You don't get to do that. It is my contract. I can nullify it. His voice was flat, hollow. No, you don't get to drop a bomb and just walk out. You bought my bar. You bought my father's debt. You showed up with a notebook and pastries, and you looked at me like I was a puzzle you needed to solve, and now you're just leaving? Because your data is corrupted? He turned, his eyes blazing. Yes, because the experiment failed. The objective was a simple, clean, mutually beneficial transaction. Instead, you became a vulnerability. My vulnerability. I felt your fear, Mila. It was not a datum. It was a dagger. I cannot optimize for that variable, and I must eliminate it. So, I'm a variable to be eliminated. Hurt twisted into fury. You are a risk I cannot calculate, he shot back, the controlled alpha finally snapping. You look at me, and you don't see a king or a monster. You see a man who doesn't understand jokes. You argue with me. You disobey me. And my wolf, the part of me that has known nothing but territory and power for decades, does not see this as insolence. It sees it as what, Caius? He ran a hand through his hair, a violently human gesture of frustration. As home, it is illogical. It is catastrophic to every strategy I have ever built. I was supposed to acquire a plausible fiancée for 30 days. Not this. Not what? She pressed, stepping closer, the crunch of glass under her boots loud in the silence. Not care if you laugh for another man, he roared, the sound echoing off the walls. Not lose the ability to think because you smell like citrus. Not feel my heart stop because someone dared to frighten you. I was supposed to be temporary. The words hung between them, a confession he hadn't meant to make. Mila's anger dissolved, leaving something raw and aching. I was supposed to be temporary, she whispered. His shoulders slumped, all the fight draining out of him. He looked exhausted, lost. You stopped being temporary, he said, his voice so low she barely heard it, rough with an emotion that had no name in his strategic vocabulary. The moment you threw that drink, I just failed to update the parameters in time. The honesty was a physical blow. She saw it then, the man beneath the alpha, the billionaire, the strategist. A man who built empires because he didn't understand people, and who was now utterly dismantled by one. He reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. His fingers wrapped around her wrist, not with force, but with a desperate gentleness that made her breath catch. "You are the only unscripted thing in my life," he confessed, his thumb stroking the frantic pulse point beneath her skin. "The only thing I did not acquire, cannot command, and do not wish to live without. And that terrifies me more than any rival pack." He drew her closer, one trembling hand coming up to cradle her jaw. His storm-gray eyes were soft, vulnerable, full of a question he didn't know how to ask. Her gaze dropped to his lips. The air between them vanished, charged with the truth they could no longer deny. He leaned in. She felt the warmth of his breath, saw his eyes start to close, and she pulled back, just an inch, a breath of space. His eyes flew open, confusion and a flash of pain darkening them. His hand fell from her face. "I can't," she breathed, her own heart breaking at the shattered hope in his eyes. "Not like this. Not because the experiment failed or the data corrupted. Not as a system error." He flinched as if struck. "If this is real, Caius," she said, her voice trembling, "then it can't be a tactical retreat. It can't be a contract negotiation. It has to be a choice, a real one." He stared at her, the most powerful man in the city, looking completely disarmed. "I don't know how to do that," he admitted, the words a raw scrape of sound. "I know," she said softly. "That's the problem." She gently pulled her wrist from his grasp. The emptiness where his touch had been was immediate and cold. "The contract," she said, forcing strength into her voice. "You're right. It's over." She turned and walked toward the back office, away from the broken window and the broken man. She didn't look back. If she had, she would have seen him not moving, standing amidst the wreckage he'd caused to save her, his head bowed, and she would have heard him whisper, not to her, but to the empty glass-strewn room, the most vulnerable confession of all. "Then teach me." The silence lasted 3 days. Her father came home, safe and baffled. The bar was repaired, the new window gleaming, all costs mysteriously covered. There were no texts, no pastries, no billionaires lurking in the shadows. The contract's final day arrived. Mila stood in the silent bar, the massive diamond feeling like a lead weight on her finger. She slid it off, placed it in its velvet box, and set it on the polished wood. It was over. The door chimed. Not Caius. A tall, sharp-faced man in an expensive coat, flanked by 2 others. The original lender, Scarlip's boss. "Miss Hart," he said, his voice slick as oil. "A gift has been delivered to your father's apartment, a reminder that some debts have interest beyond money. You will come with us, quietly, or the reminder becomes a tragedy." Fear, cold and sharp, speared through her. But before she could speak, a new voice cut through the air, calm as a guillotine's drop. "I believe you are in the wrong establishment." Caius stood in the doorway. He wasn't in a suit. He was in simple dark clothes that moved with him like a second skin. He looked relaxed, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. The lender turned, a smug smile on his face. "Wolfe, this doesn't concern you. The human is mine." The word wasn't a growl. It was a statement of absolute, incontrovertible fact. The air in the bar thickened, pressing down with the weight of pure, undiluted alpha dominance. The lender's smile vanished. "You overreach," the man snarled, but a flicker of fear was in his eyes. "No," Caius said, taking a single step inside. "I recalibrate. At 3:02 a.m., your PAC's primary holding company was dissolved. At 5:17 a.m., your bank accounts were seized. At 7:45 a.m., your allies received documented evidence of your extracurricular dealings. You have no territory, you have no money, you have no friends, you are a ghost." The man paled. "You can't." I already have. Caius's gaze shifted to Mila, and for a fraction of a second, the terrifying calm softened. Are you unharmed? She nodded, speechless. He looked back at the lender. The gift sent to her father's apartment has been intercepted. It is now in your car's back seat, with the timer activated. A cold, almost imperceptible smile. I suggest you run. Pure panic. The men scrambled, shoving past each other to flee. And just like that, it was over. The war wasn't fought with claws and howls, but with keystrokes and whispers. A kingdom dismantled by sunrise. Caius stood alone in the center of the bar. The dominance faded, leaving behind a profound stillness. He looked at the ring box on the bar. Today is the 30th day, he said. I know. Her throat was tight. The contract is fulfilled. All obligations are met. He walked toward her, each step deliberate. He stopped an arm's length away. You are free. I know that too. Then why, he asked, his voice rough, does it feel like a loss? The question hung between them, vulnerable and raw. Caius? No. He closed the distance, his hand coming up to cup her face, his thumb stroking her cheek. The touch was reverent. You asked for a choice, not a strategy, not a negotiation. He took a shaky breath, the great Alpha King brought to his knees by a single human heart. I have spent 30 days trying to solve you, to optimize you, and to fit you into my world. I was wrong. He leaned his forehead against hers, closing his eyes, a gesture of utter surrender. You are not a variable, Mila. You are the entire equation. You are the only thing in my life I cannot control, and the only thing I never want to. He pulled back to look at her, his stormy eyes glistening. This was never a contract to me. It was the closest thing I have ever had to hope. Her vision blurred with tears. He reached into his pocket, not for a velvet box. He pulled out a single plain sheet of paper. He held it out to her. On it, in his sharp, precise handwriting, was one sentence. Stay. Not as my fiancé, as my choice. A sob escaped her. She looked from the paper to his face, so open, so terrifyingly earnest. You're terrible at romance, she whispered, a watery laugh mixing with the tears. I'm excellent at permanence, he whispered back, his own voice thick. Choose me, Mila, as I have chosen you, not because of a debt, not because of a deal, but because my wolf recognized yours before I did. You are my home. She didn't hesitate. She took the paper, and where his sentence ended, she wrote beneath it, yes. Then she let the paper flutter to the floor. She reached up, curled her hands around the back of his neck, and pulled him down to her. The kiss wasn't an accident. It wasn't a demand. It was an answer. It was slow and deep and tasted like the salt of her tears and the promise on his lips. It was the sigh of a man finally finding harbor and the joyful grasp of a woman claiming her destiny. His arms wrapped around her, crushing her to him, the one hand tangling in her hair as he kissed her back with a lifetime of restrained hunger, finally set free. It was certainty. It was earned. When they finally parted, breathless, forehead still touching, he smiled. A real, full, breathtaking smile that lit his eyes and transformed his entire face. What now? She breathed. Now, he said, kissing her again softly. We write our own contract, with no clauses, no expiration. He looked at the diamond ring, forgotten on the bar. And we start with you teaching me how to be terrible at romance together. The Alpha King who owned everything finally asked for the one thing money could not buy, and she gave it freely. Some love stories begin with destiny. Others begin with a thrown drink. If this story made you smile, laugh, or feel that final heart-tugging payoff? Tap like. Subscribe and tell me in the comments, would you have thrown the drink?